Hey y'all, hey, it's Patty from Giddy Things. First of all, we're going to light the candle in our candle holder. So let me, not really, don't let me get playing with fire. Here we go. Let's light this little meditative practice. I like to take note of everything that's going on with the candle and the match as I light it. And then we'll put that on the bedside table. We've still got our little winter card in here. I'm going to look for something that's more like spring as well. We are going to do something really cool in just a minute because I think I hear the disembodied voice calling me. Be right back. Okay, I am back. And that reminds me to take off my glasses. So that was really serendipitous. As you know, I like that word. If you watched any of these at all, if this is your first video with me, Patty at Giddy Things, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are, I think at this point, only 2 members away, peace sign away, 1 peace sign away from 100 subscribers. Community members, just 2 community members. That's all we need to make 100. And then maybe we can go higher than that. I believe we can. We'll see what happens. However, I'm going to just enjoy the presence of all the beautiful foundational members of this channel and think about you, each one of you, and how much I appreciate your time and your attention and your care. You're so lovely, and I've had so much good interaction, and that's been really nice. And I love you. You know, I'll probably say that again before the video is over. I'm going to go ahead, since we've lit the candle, do 5 sprays of my Mario Badescu Skincare since 1967 facial spray with aloe herbs and rose water. Yay! So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about something that was on my mind today. And I think it got on my mind because I was watching, as I frequently do, Mornings with Granny. I will link her channel in the description. She's a lovely lady who lives in South Carolina, and she does a lot of fun challenges. And you know, I'm looking for a challenge for us to do about saving money, and I'm researching colors to see, my nose itches, y'all, sorry, researching colors to see what kind of colors to put up for everyone to vote on for our new studio that I mentioned in the video before this one. So Granny is awesome. And again, it's Mornings with Granny, and she's in South Carolina. She does all kinds of cool stuff. Like, she'll have gift cards that she can use to buy groceries, and she'll try just to buy groceries using her gift card, or to do a $20 shop challenge or $5 shop challenge, because she has a history of having had to be very, very frugal in how she manages her budget. And I love that idea of intentionality with our budgets, whether we have more discretionary income or less discretionary income. I've been in both of those categories and in between in my own experience in life. So Granny's great about helping you kind of figure that stuff out. And one of the things that she reminded me of a couple of things. First of all, was to shop, excuse me, was to shop at Food Lion, which I found out, I think there are 1,055 Food Lion grocery stores in a selection of states. I'll pop it up on the screen during editing to let you know where they are. And maybe you've experienced shopping at a Food Lion. If you have, come on in the comments and tell us, or just give us your thoughts in general. So we have a Food Lion here, and the Food Lion there's more in our area, but it is a great affordable place to shop, and primarily because if you're part of their MVP plan, which I'm guessing is most valuable player, I'm guessing, you can get tons of different kinds of offers. They have a lot of buy one get one or BOGO offers, and the handy helper and I went shopping there not that long ago and took y'all along with us. And I think I showed you some cornmeal and some frozen foods and things like that. It was the day we went to Waffle House and got takeout, and we got such a good deal. It was so affordable, and we're trying to shop more locally, support businesses that support the same kinds of values that we have. Food Lion is very much that. It is based in the states that I've shared on the screen already at this point, and It is owned now by a Danish company, by a company out of Denmark, which I think is super interesting. And I think maybe it has been since 1976. I'm not sure. I'll have to go back because I did the research, but now I'm doubting myself on the numbers. So we got a lot of good deals there. Actually, some of the same things that Granny from Mornings with Granny got, including I think ham steaks. We got a ham steaks is one of the things, and I'm not going to eat the ham steaks, but the Handy Helper and the Disembodied Voice have already had one Smithfield ham steak that they split between them because it was large enough to make the protein for a meal for them both. And it was just one of them, and I think I paid, I want to say $2.49-ish plus tax for that. So that was a really good deal. So Food Lion, which made me think about frugality in general and how I grew up. My mother was born in 1927, and my dad was born in 1930. My mom was a cougar. You know what I'm saying? She used to say I robbed the cradle because it was considered a much bigger deal, a 3-year age difference in 1957 when they got married. And it didn't take them long to get married. My mom waited until she was 30 to get married, which back then, now it's not a big deal at all. And any age you get married at is your business. If you don't get married, that's your business. And I think you're wonderful regardless of any choices you make, or as well as any choices you make, or things in your life. But back then in the deep South culture my mother grew up in, yeah, everybody was just despairing that she didn't get married. My mother was very, very pretty, and so people were always trying to fix her up with folks. Speaking of being fixed up with folks, here comes the love of my life. I'm going to pause for a second and I'll be back with the rest of the story. Y'all remember Paul Harvey? Hello. My disembodied voice brought me up the snacks that, I think I've shared with you in other videos. If you haven't seen before, I'll reiterate. We bring up snacks at night, healthy snacks, in case we get hungry, because we typically don't want to go back downstairs for the night unless we absolutely have to. So that's what he was doing. So helpful. He and the Handy Helper just take such good care of me. And also the big brother who lives in another town is super good at taking care of mama. So speaking of mamas, we were talking about my mama and my daddy. So they were, again, 27, my daddy, and 30 when they got married. My mom didn't intend to get married. She was a hairdresser for 50 years, inclusive of the time that they owned a beauty supply company. And she did customers that she'd been doing their hair literally for all 50 of those years. And my mom had seen a lot of unhappy marriages and unhappy unions. And she was like, you know what? I would rather be happy by myself than be miserable with someone else. And when she was going to be introduced to my daddy, she was so skeptical because she was like, how old is he? 27. And she was like, oh, he's just a baby. It was only 3 years. But my mom, you can imagine the different social constructs there. Again, my mom was born in 1927. My dad was born in 1930. And they were children of the Depression, which is the real central kind of core story that I'm getting to. But I can't talk about my wonderful, beautiful parents I was blessed to have without kind of a little bit of the history of how they became my parents. And so my mom, when she married my daddy, she already had a 6-year-old nephew she had custody of, her brother's son, who became my oldest brother. And he ended up, by the time I was born, he was 16 years older than I. Then I have a brother who's 10 years older than I and a sister who's 7 years older than I. And a sister of choice did not come from my mom, who is the same age as I am, except 6 months. We're 6 months apart. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention her because she's as much a sibling to me, if not, never mind, I'm not going to say that. Don't want to be ugly. So anyway, all that having been said, my mother came into the marriage when my oldest brother, who was her biological nephew, my biological first cousin, was 6 years old. And so my dad kind of had a ready-made family, but he loved it. And he was such a good dad. And so they were really interesting people. I want to get into their stories a little bit more in other videos, but the purpose of this whole thing is to say that they grew up understanding the Depression era. That's what this story is about how being raised by parents from the Depression era made a difference in my life when that wouldn't have normally been the case for the average age people were having children in 1968, the age that those people would be. My mom was above that average age for having a baby. She was 41 when I was born. And so by the time I was like 10 years old, I mean, you can do that, the math. I'm sure you're much better at it than I am. That's 51. By the time I really have a super solid memory of day to day life with my mom. So she was wonderful. But I remember a lot of the earlier part of my childhood. You know how you kind of get like episodes and scenes. Maybe you remember yours better than I remember mine. I guess my memory is a whole other story for a whole other day. There's some story behind that too. We all have so many stories behind everything in our lives. We're so interesting. It's why I love when you share things about your lives and your families. It's so interesting to me. I'm truly invested in that. So, my mom used to teach me games that had to do with what she had been taught to play when she was in the Depression era. She was one of six children, and my daddy did too, but my daddy's family was a little bit financially better off than my mom's family was during the Depression. My mother's father was born in 1880. Can you believe it? I am 56 and I have a grandfather in heaven who was born in 1880. And then my grandmother was born in 1896. So they had an age gap relationship. And my grandfather passed away tragically, complications from an accident at work. I don't want to bring you down, so I won't tell that whole story, but he passed away on the day before, December 31st, 1939, the day before Social Security went into effect. And of course, the Depression era goes all the way up until, like slightly after World War II. And really, to be honest, about till the 50s, really. And in the South, in the deep South, it had lasting impacts on people into the 50s and even the 60s. And, the South is still struggling with poverty, as many places are. So he passed away and there was no Social Security. Well, my grandmother had been married since she was 16 years old, a mother since she was 17, and she had never had a job. Of course, she had the most difficult job in the world. She was a parent and a stay-at-home parent with a bunch of little kids. There were six of them, and it was two daughters, a son, another daughter. That was my mother. She was fourth in the six, and then a son and another daughter. So they had, and I think that my Aunt Joy, the youngest child in that family, was only 5 years old when he passed away. And my Uncle Frank was in North Africa during World War II with that campaign in North Africa. So he was out and about. And my Aunt Snooks, Snooks, oh, that's another story too. Her name was Elizabeth Magdalene. Isn't that a pretty name? And so, and some Magdalena, it's different. And there's reasons her name is up for grabs. Remind me sometime and I'll tell you that story. So my Aunt Snooks was the eldest and she was already married and having children. And she was 15 years older than my mom. So my grandmother had these children over a span of years, obviously, but over quite a wide span of years, because my Aunt Snooks was born in 1915. My mom wasn't born until 12 years later, and she was the fourth child. So my Aunt Anne, who was the next eldest, was kind of quote unquote supporting the family during that time. But she had gone to beauty school and had become a hairstylist, and she was the only one with an income other than my uncle, who was away at war. And he sent money home. There's all kinds of sweet stories. My mother wasn't going to get her senior ring in 1944, and he sent the money home because he didn't come home until the end of the war, for her, the $10 for her to get her ring, which was very sweet. So my mom was raised in pretty much, she wouldn't have called it this. She never would have called it this, but abject poverty from our point of view. I mean, they had to stuff newspapers in between the boards on their houses, and they had to go from house to house. My grandfather, Theodore, was a Dutch, that's what they called him, was an oil core man back in the days when they used to try to figure out whether there was oil somewhere by digging down really deeply, and then they would bring up the core and he would taste it. And by the way it tasted, I was told he could figure out whether or not it was going to be oil rich or not if they went down far enough. So, oh man, so many stories to share. So, back to the Depression era games. So, my mom taught me the coolest stuff to play, and I think we can. I think this is why I'm so interested in the Waldorf method of schooling. And I probably need to do a video on that at some point. It's sort of low key the way that we homeschooled our youngest son, our younger son. And it's just an interesting way to integrate the things of daily life into a child's play. My mom didn't have a lot of things to play with. She didn't have a lot of toys, but she did really, because among other people, her mother and her father helped her, but her older brother Frank was really sweet. She used to always call him a big kid. I didn't really get to know my Uncle Frank that well because he passed away when I was very young. But he was apparently just the coolest big brother, and he taught them all kinds of cool stuff, including how to milk a cow, which my mom said was a Tom Sawyer kind of act because he convinced her that milking a cow was going to be the most fun in the world. And then once you start to milk a cow, you can't stop to milk them. So my mom was up early in the morning and came and, had to wait till late in the afternoon to milk the cows. So that sort of having an older brother who was full of fun and play, my mom having had that affected me as a child too, because of the games that my mom taught me that Uncle Frank had taught her and that she had then played with her younger siblings. I think the disembodied voice would like to come in and settle down, so I'm going to pause on that game part and I'll be back. And for you, nothing, but for me, a couple minutes. We are back to talk about the Depression era games, and there's tons of them that my mom taught me. And she and I would play dominoes, we'd play cards because I love to play cards. But it's so funny. Years and years later, I found out that my mom didn't really like playing cards that much. She liked dominoes because she loved math, and there was math involved in that. And I guess in the card games too, but she didn't really like it that much. But like the sweet mom that she was, well, I don't know, she was loving. I don't know that the word sweet would apply so much to me or my mother, but very loving. So she would play with me, and then years later I was like, hey mama, do you want to play some crazy eights, or you want to play some rummy or something? And she was like, oh, I hate playing cards. It's like, oh my gosh, we used to play cards all the time when I was little. And she was like, yeah, that was because you were little. The same thing that happened when I said, excuse me, we've got the pollen. It's the deep south, so it's the pollination of the south. The same thing happened when I used to, when I got older, and I would say, oh, mama, let me read this to you. She said eventually, after I asked her a few times and read something to her, she'd go, I hate to be read to. And I was like, I read to you constantly when I was a child. And she was like, yeah, and you were a little kid and you needed to learn to read really well. And so I let you read aloud to me. But I was like, well, didn't you enjoy it? And she said, yeah, I enjoyed it because you were a little kid, but now you're grown. Stop reading to me. I love my mama. So authentic through and through. So we played one of my favorite games, and this came directly from the Depression era. And I'm interested if anyone has ever heard of anyone else playing this particular game. It was a lot of pretend. And her brother had played this with her, and then she played it with her younger siblings, the two who came after her. And they play ranch or farm. And we would first, our big thing was to get our supplies. So we would set out to find sticks that had a V in them so you could make fences. And we put those in the ground, and then we take the straight sticks and put them to make a little fence. And the fence didn't have to be that good because we weren't dealing with real horses and cows, right? But we would have different farm animals, like the pecans. We had a pecan tree in our backyard when we came back to Louisiana from Texas, and the pecans would be like the cows, and the acorns would be from the oak tree would be like the pigs. And then we'd have little berries from a China berry tree that might be something, and we'd have something that would be a horse, like pine needles or something like that. And we would set up our farm, and we'd talk about the routine on our farm and what we needed to get done. And then, maybe one of us would knock down a fence and be like, oh, there's a fence down in the North 40 or whatever, and we'd have to go fix the fence. It was so much fun. And she used to play with me for hours like that. And I cannot tell you the enrichment that came into my life because of my mother spending good quality time with me, encouraging me, and actually requiring me to use my imagination, right? Another thing she did, which was popular when we moved back to a city kind of place from the country in Texas, when we were in Shreveport, she would, and we didn't live in a terribly safe neighborhood. Shreveport is not the safest place in the world. I love my hometown. I love where I'm from. But, it's just, it is what it is. And where we lived, and if you know Shreveport, you may know this neighborhood. We lived in Highlands. We lived in not South Highlands, but Highlands, the part going toward Stoner Avenue. And so and if if that doesn't mean anything to you, I understand that too. But my mom would have dirt dumped in our backyard. It didn't cost very much to have, and she knew people. She always knew somebody who did something because she did so much hair, and somebody would do something, or somebody's spouse would do something. And so my mom would have the dirt dumped in the backyard, and we just got this huge mound of dirt to play in, right? To run Hot Wheels cars. If you've been to Dollar Tree with me, you know I love Hot Wheels cars and Matchbox cars to run Hot Wheels cars on. Once we came back to Shreveport, I knew as a kid that we had to be careful with money. I never thought of us. I think as children, if our parents don't talk about us around us about finances, we don't really think about it. But I knew that, I didn't think anybody could just throw money out the window. When I was a kid, I think everybody pretty much lived the way we did. And we had what we needed and a lot of what we wanted because mom and daddy sacrificed. But I also kind of didn't go into a store and go, I want that, I want that, I want that. But there were certain understandings my mom and I had. Like, mom and I would go to the grocery store, to the Safeway, and she would see everybody she knows. And the disembodied voice can tell you that that's how I am now, right? Disembodied voice. Mm-hmm. You can go, or if people recognize them, they'll be like, are you Dr. Timon's husband? Are you Dr. Timon's child? And it's funny. I laugh when I call myself that, even though it's true. I don't think of myself as a Dr. Timon, but other people who take my classes and stuff do. So my mom never met a stranger. I'm kind of like that too. I haven't told y'all yet about my beautiful friend Ava I met in Winston-Salem at the Goodwill. We became instant friends and had a good talk. And it stopped me from looking around and buying too much too, which was just a blessing from God. But mama and I would go to the grocery store, and little golden books used not to be expensive. I'm going to go look that up and pop it up on the screen. Now they're more expensive, but the little golden books like Pokey Little Puppy and stuff like that, and some of the Richard Scarry stuff that made it into golden books, weren't expensive. And my mom would always let me get one. They were on this little carousel, just all little golden books in the grocery store, and she would go pick out a book. And I didn't do it until she told me to do it. But another little habit that we had, she used to get my dad, because he worked so hard, a little treat, and he loved the Brock's Pick and Mix candy, and they had the white bags. I'll see if I can, now that I know how to do picture in picture, I'll see if I can find a picture of that and pop it up on the screen too. But you could get the candy, and you bought it according to its weight. And my daddy he loved cinnamon discs. His favorite things were the Neapolitan squares. Though that was his absolute favorite, that are coconut. And he liked the butter discs, like the butterscotch candies, and just different, kinds of candies. He loved Almond Joy, and he loved paydays and things like that. That's a whole different story. He loved coconut, and he loved orange. I used to make him an orange cake pretty much every year for a long time for his birthday. But mama would get him a little pick and mix. Well, back then, if you put a nickel in, you could get 5 pieces of candy. So it was basically penny candy. And mama would, give me a nickel, or I would have my nickel with me. And I would put the nickel in and get out, I'd carefully choose my 5 pieces of candy. And we didn't have sugary stuff all the time, right? When we got a little bit more flush with our money, we started eating a little more intemperately. But I think that's the case for a lot of people. So anyway, just mornings with Granny brought those memories back to me. And as those memories continue to come back to me, and the things that I think about all the time, I'll share them in some story time. And hopefully you'll relate to some of these things, and we can build our community based on some of our shared experiences or similar experiences. Well, for tonight, we're going to close out story time, and I hope that you are all doing incredibly well. Of course, as always, I hope you know how loved you are. I love you, and people can love you just how you are now. You don't have to change for people to love you. And if you're not finding that to be the case in your life, find new people. You see what I'm saying? And it can be done. Anyhow, what I say, you are so loved. I love you so much. And as always, please do go in peace and love to serve others. And please do pray for Ukraine.